Okay, so here I want to cover a little bit about how we lose self-awareness. And I use the word lose because as babies, we are very attuned to what our needs are. We are very attuned to our sensations in our body. We cry so that our needs can be met. If I'm hungry, I cry. If I'm thirsty, I cry. If a diaper change needs to happen, babies cry. Where we start losing that awareness of ourselves is if our cries are not met by our caregivers, if our needs are not met by caregivers. Now, they're not going to always be met by caregivers. There's good enough parenting. But if there is a big gap between our needs and they're not met by our caregivers for a variety of reasons, at some point, the message that our system gets and the meaning we start making for ourselves is that my needs are not important. And so we start disconnecting with our needs, because if I could feel my needs and they're not going to be met, the pain of that is going to be a lot. So it's easier to just disconnect with the need and not have the need. Because if I don't have the need, then I'm not going to be disappointed. Now, this is not happening at a very cognitive level. This is happening at a subconscious level, which I'm going to dive into right now. But that's one of the ways that we're now slowly losing the connection with ourselves, to the point that as an adult, which was absolutely true for me for most of my life, I didn't really know what my needs were. And so learning to connect with those needs was a big part of my healing journey. And in many ways, it's almost easier to know of your wants, because there's a paradigm for that in the world, right? You should want this, so you connect to that. But do I really need that? It may not. So that's the part with what happens with the caregivers not meeting our needs. The second way we are losing more and more connection with ourselves is all in very well-meaning ways when we are being socialized by institutions, and those could be parents, it's also schools. Act a certain way and don't act another way. Because we have to learn the societal norms, we have to fit into society. So we are told how to present ourselves and how not to present ourselves. We have given messages. Crying is weak. Pull yourself up and keep going. Money doesn't grow on trees. These are all messages that we may have received with a million other messages that came from our parents in trying to make us successful or aware of how we should move through life. So that is called socialization, and its close partner is conditioning, where we may not be told, but we make sense by association. So if mom and dad don't have time for me, then maybe I'm not worthy of their time. Or and we start losing innate sense of worthiness. Or if mom says, oh, dad's the one who's going to come and make this decision, then we learn that the power in the house is really with the man. So these are subliminal messages that we're getting throughout our lifetimes. And so those become sort of our beliefs. And of course, we are having our own life experiences that come along with that too, right? So if I go to school and I'm bullied, or if I'm shamed about the way I dress or the way I speak, then I'm going to contract and want to not show up as myself. So we're now slowly over time becoming less and less authentic, because we're choosing to fit into society and fit in and have a sense of belonging within our families and cultures. And the final piece here, which is emotional wounding and trauma, this is of course really big. And trauma doesn't have to necessarily be physical trauma or really significant what we think of trauma. One of the most understood areas is childhood emotional neglect. Most of us were not raised by very attuned parents, because attachment theory, which is where attunement and all of this comes from, wasn't really in the zeitgeist, even when I was raising my children. So being attuned to our children's emotions and validating emotions may not have happened for especially us. So if that's the case, that we get a little bit separated from our emotions, and to the extent that over time we may not feel our emotions, there might be a sense of numbness. When you have experienced trauma, as I have, is termed dissociation, where I was totally disconnected with every aspect of my existence, to the point I really didn't know that I existed. I mean, it sounds strange to say that. Again, I went through life, I was doing everything, but I had no awareness of my existence at the level of my body, my thoughts, my emotions. So the way I showed up often was in a very reactive way.